Greetings, friends, and welcome to our last night of LifeLink for the summer of 2023. Tonight we find ourselves in Proverbs chapter 3 and verses 1 through 10. And as you turn there, just be thinking about what we've covered thus far in the series entitled The Way of Wisdom in these first couple chapters of Proverbs. But I want you to be encouraged that the way of wisdom is so good. I hope you've seen that. We saw it last week and the week before. And it's good because of what it causes us to miss and avoid, that way of death, the immoral woman, the seductress, and all the destruction and devastation that comes. And so it is so good. It reminds me of 1 Timothy where it talks about pursuing godliness, because godliness is profitable even for this life and for the one which is to come. It's profitable for all things. And so here, as you come to Proverbs chapter 3, in verses 1 through 10, we're going to get a big picture of what a godly life looks like. Some godly encouragements, commands really, they're in the imperative, from a father to his son. These are broad instructions for blessed living. What I want you to do is read Proverbs 3, 1 through 10. And what we're going to see is 5 broad instructions. But with each broad instruction, in other words, big picture principles for godly living, you're going to see a blessing that goes with it. The way of wisdom is good. So read Proverbs 3, 1 through 10. Do it as a group. Have someone read out loud, or 2 people, whatever it might be. And then as a group, just list out the 5 blessings. They'll be pretty clear for you as you go through this passage. And I'll be back in just a moment. Well, let me share with you these 5 broad instructions that this father, Solomon, through the inspiration of God, is giving to his son. You know, it is good for us as parents to think through what are the broad principles for the godly way of life. There's general principles that really provide a foundation for the detailed instruction, the little details that'll come for godly living, and even in the rest of the book here, but that we as parents will teach our children. But what are some broad principles that our children have to have as a foundation so that they will receive even the other principles to come later? Well, let me give you the 5 that Solomon gives. This is a great textbook for us as parents to follow. The first one, you see it in verse 1. Notice the commands. My son, do not forget my law, but let your heart keep my commands. And then there's the blessing. For length of days and long life and peace they will add to you. Here's how I've summarized it. Honor and obey your parents. Honor and obey your parents. This is really a summary of commandment, of the 10 Commandments, where the children are told, and the commandment is given, children, obey or honor your parents. Honor your father and mother, for this is the first commandment with promise. And notice the specific text. Do not forget my law. It's actually my Torah. Forgetting, though, here is something more than a lapse of mind. You are, when you forget, you're not finding your satisfaction in what has been presented. You're like, I'm just going to let that one go. This one doesn't satisfy me. Instead, I'm finding my satisfaction in someone or something else, some other instruction that you will willfully hold on to, that you intentionally neglect then the teaching of your father, and it doesn't remain in your mind. And you see that in the positive. Don't forget it. Don't let something else satisfy your mind and capture your heart. Don't forget my law, but let your heart keep, guard, protect as something valuable, treat as something important, my commandments. What he's saying here is, when I give a commandment, when I give instruction, hear it, honor because of the position God has given me to you as a father, and as parents. We're given to our children for their blessing, for their protection. He's really saying, son, the godly instruction from a parent is something that you ought to treasure and value. Here's a question again for young people that are in our groups tonight. Is it easy for you to ask your parents for their counsel? Even young men and young women, as those who have reached adolescence, now in their teenage years, if you will. Biblically, they're called young men and young women. The godly instruction of parents is still a blessing to you. See it, desire it. Parents, be ready to share it, be in sharing it. Notice again the blessing that goes with it. For length of days and long life, they will add to you. Think of Ephesians 6 in the first 3 verses where it's, children, obey your parents and honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with promise, that it may go well with you, may live long on the earth. This is that broad principle. We talked about it back in Proverbs 1. Parents, don't provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Here's one way you can even take this blessing. And we, even as adults, we can look back in our days of childhood and whatnot, and perhaps you could say it this way. Have you ever disobeyed your parents and ended up in harm's way? Later in life, as life progressed, and you remember your parents teaching you some godly instruction, but you didn't heed it, and ended up costing you something. It brought harm to your life. Peace was not added to my life, but instead it was a lack of peace and well-being. Well, it's good for us to teach that broad principle. Children, honor and obey your parents. By the way, in our home, one of the ways I hope our children have taught that is we've even given them a definition for what it means to obey. A definition. Let's think about this. What does it mean to do this? And hopefully they'll capture it. And because this is what God desires, children, obey your parents. And we call it. We say it this way, and you can refine it, and improve upon it. But we found it very helpful, especially for young children. Do what you are told right away with a smile on your face. What we're just trying to teach them, here's God's good way. Here's a broad principle, broad instruction for living. Honor and obey your parents. Well, there's a second one that is given in Proverbs 3, and that is found in verse 3. Let not mercy and truth forsake you. And then you got the command again. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Again, it's in the negative first. Don't let it forsake you, abandon you, and instead hold on to them, write them, make them be part of your life and observable in you. What is this really speaking about? How would you summarize this principle? Let not mercy and truth forsake you, but rather bind them and write them on the tablet of your heart. I'd say it this way, be godly. Be godly. Let your inner character, what controls your heart, write them on your heart. And your outer conduct, bind them around your neck so they're even visible. Be marked by the character and conduct of God. You see, Proverbs is not presenting to us this way of wisdom, doesn't present to us just this mere external ethic. Just do this, do this, do this. Wisdom is far more than the externals. In the second broad command, the Father is giving 2 attributes of God, and they're supposed to be written on our heart, and it's to mark the people of God. It's going to be godly living. The first attribute there is mercy, or hesed, that covenantal love of God where He keeps His covenant, but it involves this compassion, this mercy, this loving kindness that God has for His people. It's a compassion towards others that overflows into and impacts every area of our life. And then there's this truth, which is this faithfulness or this steady character. It's this reliability. It's a trustworthiness. It's a faithfulness. If you're going to be faithful, it's going to require a standard. For example, what's the standard when you say, I'm going to pay you this amount? Well, you just made the standard. I'm going to do it. Then you have to do it. You have to pay that amount. You say you will be there. Well, then you should be there. You are expected to work 8 hours in a day. Well, if the boss is watching or not watching, be faithful. What it's saying here is you're going to be the same no matter the circumstances as you seek to consistently follow God, your Savior. And aren't you thankful? God is reliable. He's dependable. He's trustworthy. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God is truth. And implied there is He is the standard. His word becomes the standard. And he's saying to us here, let God's standard and God's overflowing mercy, His love, His tender kindness, let that control you in every area of your life. May that mark your life. May you reflect the image and character of God. Be godly. You can see the importance of both of these truths. Ephesians 4, verse 15, speaking the truth in love. John 1:14, describing Jesus Christ, we beheld His glory, glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. There's 3 times in Proverbs where you'll see this couplet of mercy and truth together. We'll stop the video. I'll have you quickly look at those. And I just want you to ask the question here, why are mercy and truth both important? Why do they go together? What happens if you only have one and not the other? Well, look at those 3 verses. They're on your sheet, and then we'll pick up the video in just a moment. Well, you can see how mercy and truth, when you don't have them, it's going to lead you to every evil way. This is just a broad instruction. This is just godly character for how we treat people, and then there's a standard. I was reminded, in our culture today, truth is really out the window, but yet we say we have mercy. We say it's a loving thing, but not have God's standard. And I was reminded of an English medical doctor who's lost his job for refusing to call his patients by their preferred pronoun. But really what he's standing with is mercy and truth. Because if he were to forsake truth by calling somebody something and deceiving them with a lie, he's actually saying this, it's one of the least loving things I can do. It is unkind for me to do that. I would be following an evil path if I forsake truth. But because I have love for this person, I need to hold to the truth. There's that standard, God's standard. Today, it's harder for us to have mercy and truth. And some people, you don't have much high esteem because they have forsaken that. But in general, mankind even recognizes the importance of mercy and truth. And ultimately, you will find favor and high esteem, causing others to admire you, not only in the sight of man, but ultimately in the sight of God. This is good. Not that every man will like it, but it's a good way for us to live godly. And he's laying that foundation in Proverbs 3 through 4. Reflect the heart and the character of God. Well, the third broad principle, perhaps one of the most frequently quoted Proverbs, is found in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. I'm going to summarize it this way. It's a complete surrender of your heart to the Lord. Completely surrender your heart to the Lord. The command is trust. Trust in the Lord with, and here's the word, all your heart. And then there's actually there's 3 commands here. And lean not, there's the negative one. All the commands so far is a negative. This is what you don't do. Don't lean on your own understanding. And then he comes back with the word all. In all your ways, acknowledge him. And then you get the blessing. And he shall direct your path. But notice the first command, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And the last one, in all your ways. What kind of surrender is that? That's a complete surrender. Compare that with leaning upon your own understanding in some area or in some ways. The word for trust gives the idea to confide in, to set your hope in, to put your confidence in. It's in a complete reliance upon the Lord with your entire heart, with all your heart. And then he turns around and he says, okay, do not lean. And we kind of get the idea of leaning. It's when you lean up and support yourself again. You're relying on something else. That's the literal picture of this word here, where you become comfortable just leaning on something. You're taking refuge in that, whatever that is. And here, it's your own understanding. Emphasis is on own. It's just a mere secular or fleshly wisdom. It leaves no room for God, and that's what you begin leaning upon. You say, no, don't do that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean in any way on just your own mere wisdom, a fleshly wisdom that has no room for God. And then he turns it around. He says, in all your ways then, acknowledge who? Acknowledge him. Allow him, if you will, to be the pilot, not the co-pilot, but the pilot. The pilot rules. The pilot is the one who leads us. He's talking here, just completely surrender. Honor him in every area. Trust him. Rely upon him and his word. Don't go run into your own ways, your own thoughts, your own desires apart from him. And I love the blessing. He shall direct your path. And my Bible even has a footnote in there. It says, or make straight or make smooth the path. This is actually a same word as used in Isaiah 40, 3-4, where it's a prophecy referring to John the Baptist, where when he comes, he's going to make straight a highway for our God in the desert. And every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain brought low. By the way, we do that on our roads today. Do you notice on a lot of, when there's valleys, instead of going down into the valley, I mean, some roads we still go down a hill and back up, but oftentimes there's a bridge. And we don't go all the way down. Instead, it's making it straight. It's making it easier for us to get across. If you ever travel through mountainous regions, you notice as you get to the top, there's a lot of times dynamite and land-moving equipment has come in and has changed the shape of the mountain. And the mountaintops have been brought low so that it's easier. It's a straighter path for us to take. Well, when you acknowledge the Lord in everything and your reliance is completely in the Lord and you're not resting on your secular fleshly wisdom, what's going to happen? Your path is going to be straighter. It's going to be smoother. It's going to be without all those obstacles. It's not going to be as hard. What a blessing. What a blessing. He's encouraging broad way of living here on this narrow path still, but it's a broad principle, broad instruction, a broad commandment. In every area, just trust him and then acknowledge him in his word. You know, here's an example of how this might flesh out in your life. You know, as a student, maybe you want to be on the honor roll. And so you're taking this test and you're tempted to do what? To maybe look at someone else's answers or to get out a book and cheat on the test, look up the answer when you're not supposed to do that. And your own understanding says, I want to be on the honor roll. What do you have to do there? Well, in all your ways, acknowledge him. It's going to be what's best for you down the road. Don't take the shortcut. Don't take the shortcut. Solomon is pleading with his son. In every decision in your heart, rely on the Lord and then acknowledge him on that path. He's going to take care of it. He's going to make your way straight. Honor him. Honor him. The fourth broad instruction for this narrow way of walking in wisdom, this broad principle which will help us with the details even down the road, is found in verses 7 and 8. And it's really a continuation of the principle in verses 5 and 6, but putting it more in the negative perspective. And I'm going to summarize it this way. Watch out for pride. This is a sin that so oftentimes gets us. This is a sin that was at the root of Satan's fall. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, arrogancy, and the evil way. Do I hate? And it's just pride is right away listed, arrogancy. And he's going to address that, and he's warning his son here. Here's a danger. Don't do this. Do not be wise where? In your own eyes. Do not revere yourself so much that you become the foundation for wisdom. When we're wise in our own eyes, it's what I think controls everything. It is that secular, again, and fleshly wisdom that doesn't include the God who sees and knows all. Being wise in your own eyes. Your eyes, when it says that, do not be wise in your own eyes, connects us back to verse 5, your own understanding. Again, the source here is self. It's my understanding, it's my eyes, and that's where this wisdom comes from. The source is not the Lord. And so that's why he says then in the next verse, or in the next command, fear the Lord. That's the positive. He's the beginning of wisdom. He is wisdom. In the wise way, it begins when we fear him, revere him, not ourselves. Think about how backwards it is to have our infinitely wise Creator. By the way, 1 Timothy 1:7 is a great verse here. To God who alone is wise. Our infinitely wise Creator. And yet we as a creature are going to be wise in our own eyes. We're going to get ourselves into all sorts of trouble that way. It'd be like this. Let me just try to put this in some practical illustrations for us. Can you imagine a heart surgeon who's studied and prepared? He has wisdom. He knows how the heart works, et cetera, et cetera. And for myself to come into the room and you're ready to have heart surgery, and I say, hey, heart surgeon, you need to get out of the way. I'm going to do the heart surgery today. You'd say, no way, get out of here. Pastor, you have no wisdom with this. You'd want the heart surgeon doing it. Or talking about pilots of the plane, would you ever want to get on a plane and say, pilot, today I'm going to fly this plane. I know how to do it. No, some of you might have a pilot's license and you know how to do it, but for the most of us, we don't know how to do it. And if we think we're going to be wise in our own eyes, and we're not going to let the pilot be in control, that plane is headed for a lot of trouble. That plane's going to head for a lot of trouble. Telling the infinitely wise God that my wisdom is sufficient to handle this situation, I have this all figured out, I don't need your input, is just plain foolishness. Watch out for pride. And so it's evil for us even to do that, to just depend on ourselves and our own understanding and our fleshly, secular heart, if you will, that is outside of the Lord. And notice the blessing when we are not wise in our own eyes and we fear the Lord and we depart from evil. It will be health to your flesh and strength. It'll go well. It'll be a physical even benefit to you in your life. Well, the final principle in this first section, which begins with my son, he's just giving him some broad instructions for the way of wisdom. The final one, I would say it this way: honor the Lord with all that he has given to you. Honor the Lord with all that he has given to you. Notice the command. And in this one, it's only one command. It's honor. Honor gives the idea of making weighty, of importance. And you're making weighty with the sense of bringing glory and honor to that person, allowing him, if you will, to be seen as impressive, allowing him to get the glory and the honor. Here's a question. Why do that with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase? Is it not easy for covetousness and the thought of life is all about the abundance of the things we possess. Isn't it easy for us, even sometimes I've seen this even in parenting, and we all can be guilty of this, where instead of in God we trust, it's in our possessions we trust, and we make our possessions weighty. And we parent in such a way that we say, okay, parents, children, do this so you can get the highest paying job. That's what's most important. So that you can have this in your life, and it's materialism. Sometimes one of the most dangerous times for us is even when we are blessed with possessions. Honor the Lord with your possessions. Implied here is he has things. And with the first fruits of all your increase. In other words, there's an increase. There's a blessing. There's success. Even materially, we have things. And he's saying at that point in time, beware that your glory and your honor does not get transferred to your things. Look what I've done. Look what I've achieved. Look what I've built. Look what I have accomplished. Or look at this great possession. And then as we do that, we make God insignificant. Watch out for success. Deuteronomy 8:11 through 18. Let's look at it real quickly here this evening. A little longer passage tonight. But Deuteronomy 8:11 through 18, as we tie this together, just a great, great reminder. I think this is even where this principle is built upon. Look at verse 11, Deuteronomy 8. Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments, his judgments, and his statutes, which I command you today. Lest, when you have eaten and are full, and have built beautiful houses, and you dwell in them, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold are multiplied, etc., etc., and then in that time you forget God. And down in verse 17, then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth. Wow. It's bringing honor to myself and bringing honor to this. Look at all these possessions I have. And who is forgotten? Beware that you do not forget the Lord. Verse 18, you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth. And it takes us back even to the Mosaic covenant here, where if you obey, these blessings are going to come for the nation of Israel in general. So how do you honor the Lord? How would the Israelites honor the Lord? How would they make God seen as weighty even when there's success, even when there's blessing, even when there's provision that comes in? Well, one of the key ways in which they would do that is through their offerings and their sacrifices. Oftentimes, it would be a thanksgiving offering, where it's saying, we recognize this harvest, it's completely dependent upon you. You sent the rain, you caused it to grow, you've allowed the pestilence and the disease to stay away. You're the sovereign over it. Yes, we've worked. Yes, we've labored. But even that strength comes from God himself. And now you've blessed us with all this provision. And we want to just thank you. And we don't want to thank you with the leftovers, because that's not honorable to you. That's not making much of you. But we want to give you the first part. We want to honor you with the first fruits of all of that you have entrusted to us. Giving to the Lord is a way we have of honoring him. That's why we give of our tithes and our offerings to the Lord. But we are to do it with a heart of thanksgiving, recognizing that everything, even the power to get wealth, comes from him. A thankful heart, which then practices giving, thanksgiving, even of literal sacrifices and offerings, is the way to honor the Lord. It's the way to honor the Lord. And that's what this passage is speaking about. Notice the blessing that comes. And again, this takes you back to Deuteronomy 28, the blessings with obedience. And your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. You won't face all the curses by forgetting God. It's interesting. I was just thinking earlier this summer, was at a Laterno camp in Lake Canandaigua for a couple days for a family retreat. But there's a testimony of R.G. Laterno, who wanted to become actually a pastor. And his pastor said, no, we need godly businessmen. God needs good Christian businessmen. And so he went on, became a very successful businessman, specifically, ironically, in land moving materials, as we think about building roads and stuff along those lines. But that's how he earned a lot of his income. He had over 300 patents at one time. But he had this motto. He gave 90% of its income to the Lord and lived on 10%. Why? Because he ultimately viewed everything as from God. And this is the amount of money he thought God would want him to live on. But it was God's money, whether he lived on it or gave it away. He honored the Lord with all of his possessions, whether he kept them for himself and invested it and used it for ministry purposes, or he gave it away or just used it to enjoy, as God gives us richly all things to enjoy. Matthew 6:33 is actually on his grave, ascribed on his grave, and it says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added to you." In other words, in his righteousness. Honor the Lord. Make your life about him, not about things. And don't put so much honor and glory on the things. Honor the Lord. Well, those are 5 broad instructions that are given from a father to his son, that are laying a foundation for the rest of the details that are going to come ahead. But notice with all of them, the way of wisdom is good. There's a blessing that is connected with them. Well, I left you some application questions, and I again want to just say thank you to all those that have hosted this year, for all the various groups, for all of you for participating, for the leaders of the groups. Thank you for your work and your diligence this summer. I trust this has been a profitable study in the book of Proverbs. God bless you. Have a great evening.